In the spring of 1958, a coach at the State University of Physical Culture in Moscow received unusual instructions. The letter came on official stationery, but the signature was illegible. He was to select his 3 best swimmers and prepare them for trials in conditions he'd never encountered. Cold water endurance beyond anything in competitive swimming. The coach, whose name appears in university records as Viktor Sergeyevich Kamenev, kept a private journal. Years later, fragments of that journal would surface, raising more questions than answers. The State University of Physical Culture was established in 1930 as the Soviet Union's premier training ground for athletes. By the 1950s, it had become something more, a nexus where sports science intersected with military research, where the human body became a laboratory for Cold War innovation. Official records show extensive funding for winter adaptation studies during this period. But the specific programs receiving this funding, their details remain curiously absent from public archives. What we find instead are gaps, redactions, and bureaucratic silence. The Barents Sea, a body of water where the Arctic Ocean meets the Norwegian and Greenland seas. Water temperatures hover near freezing year-round. It's an unlikely location for swimming trials. Yet multiple documents reference expeditions to the Kola Peninsula, where the Barents Sea crashes against Soviet shores. Supply requisitions mention cold water immersion equipment and physiological monitoring devices. Transportation logs show groups of university students and faculty traveling to military installations near Murmansk. The pattern suggests something systematic, something planned. One name appears repeatedly in fragmentary records: Larisa Dmitrievna Volkova. A competitive swimmer from Leningrad, she'd won regional championships in the 200-meter freestyle. Her university file contains performance metrics, medical evaluations, psychological assessments. Then, in March 1957, her file abruptly shifts. New entries reference special training protocol and temperature tolerance exceptional. 6 months later, her name disappears from competition rosters entirely. Her family would later claim she'd been recruited for important state work. They never saw her compete again. The theoretical framework existed decades before these alleged programs. Soviet physiologists had been studying hypothermia and human cold tolerance since the 1920s. Researchers like Pyotr Anokhin explored how the body adapts to extreme conditions. This research had obvious military applications: survival techniques for pilots downed in Arctic waters, for naval personnel operating in northern theaters. If swimmers could be trained to function in freezing water for extended periods, the implications for covert operations, for maritime reconnaissance, the possibilities would have been immediately apparent to certain branches of Soviet intelligence. Coach Kamenev's journal entries become increasingly cryptic after July 1957. The students show remarkable adaptation, he writes. But the psychological strain concerns me. They're being asked to suppress natural fear responses. He describes training sessions where swimmers were submerged in ice baths for progressively longer durations, starting at 5 minutes, eventually reaching 30, then 45. The goal, apparently, was not just physical endurance, but mental conditioning to override the body's survival instincts, to embrace the cold rather than fight it. Lake Ladoga, Europe's largest lake, stretches across northwestern Russia. In winter, ice can reach thickness of 60 centimeters or more. The idea of swimming beneath such ice seems absurd, suicidal. Yet rumors persist of exactly such an attempt. An elderly resident of the village of Konovets, speaking in the early 1990s, recalled military cordons around a section of the lake in winter 1958. "They told us it was naval exercises," he said. "But we could see figures on the ice, equipment we didn't recognize. And then, for just a moment, someone emerging from a hole in the ice, far from where they'd gone in." The physics of under-ice swimming present extraordinary challenges. Disorientation becomes immediate and absolute. The diver cannot surface freely, trapped beneath an impenetrable ceiling. Navigation relies entirely on guidelines or extraordinary spatial awareness. Water temperature at such depths hovers just above freezing. Without specialized equipment, survival time is measured in minutes. Yet certain military applications would justify developing exactly this capability. Infiltration of ice-locked harbors, recovery of sensitive materials, or simply demonstrating what Soviet physiology could achieve, if it could be achieved. Documents obtained from Provincial Sports Committee archives show budget allocations for special aquatic programs between 1955 and 1960. The amounts are substantial, but the line item descriptions are deliberately vague. Equipment procurement, facility modification, stipends for participating athletes. One notation references payments to families of athletes no longer able to continue training due to medical developments. The phrasing is bureaucratic, antiseptic. It reveals nothing while suggesting everything. Were these simply injured athletes receiving compensation, or something more permanent, more tragic? A second coach, interviewed anonymously in 1989, described pressures from above. "We were told that certain achievements must not be publicized," he recalled. The athletes understood this was part of serving the state, but some struggled with it. They'd trained their whole lives for recognition, for victory, to achieve something remarkable, and then be ordered into silence. He paused during the interview, according to the transcript. One swimmer asked me, "If we succeed and no one knows, did we really succeed at all?" I had no answer for him. The connection to naval intelligence remains circumstantial, but persistent. Several swimmers allegedly involved in the program had family members in the Northern Fleet. Others were recruited directly after showing aptitude in military physical training programs. Admiral Sergei Gorshkov, commander of the Soviet Navy during this period, was known to champion unconventional approaches to maritime superiority. Declassified documents show he advocated for human-centered capabilities alongside technological development. Whether this included extreme cold water swimming programs, the available evidence neither confirms nor definitively denies. Medical records present their own mysteries. Hospital admission logs from Murmansk between 1957 and 1959 show an unusual cluster of cases: severe hypothermia, frostbite, pneumonia, complications from extreme cold exposure. Several patients listed occupations as student or athlete, ages ranging from 19 to 28. Standard procedures would have generated follow-up documentation, long-term health monitoring. Yet these files end abruptly, transferred to archives classified as restricted medical research. Access to such archives remains limited even today, officially for privacy reasons, though critics suggest other motivations. The Barents Sea expeditions, according to fragmentary accounts, occurred primarily in autumn and early winter. The timing seems intentional, building tolerance progressively as temperatures dropped. One supply manifest lists thermal imaging equipment and underwater communication devices, technology that would have been cutting edge for the late 1950s. Another document references observation bunkers constructed on coastal installations, structures where scientists could monitor swimmers without being seen, creating controlled environments for what might otherwise appear as natural ocean conditions, if these expeditions occurred at all. Larisa Volkova's mother gave a single interview to a regional newspaper in 1991. She described her daughter's transformation after joining the special program. She became quiet, distant. When she visited, she couldn't tell us what she was doing. She said it was important, that we'd understand someday. The last letter from Larisa arrived in December 1958. "I'm doing work that matters," she wrote. "I wish I could tell you everything. Someday, perhaps, you'll hear about what we've accomplished." The family never heard from her again. Official records list her as relocated for state employment, with no further details provided. Skeptics point to the lack of definitive evidence. No photographs of these alleged swims exist. No official acknowledgement from Soviet archives, even after declassification of many Cold War programs. The testimonies come from aging witnesses, their memories filtered through decades. Could these be conflations, misrememberings, or deliberate fabrications? The Soviet Union was known for disinformation, for creating legends around non-existent capabilities. Perhaps the entire story served as psychological warfare, making Western intelligence agencies chase shadows while real programs developed elsewhere. The conspiracy theory itself might be the conspiracy. Yet the pattern of gaps feels too consistent for coincidence. Files that should exist but don't. Athletes whose careers terminate abruptly in their prime with euphemistic explanations. Budget allocations that correspond to witness accounts. Coach Kamenev's journal, which surfaced in 2003 when his effects were donated to a sports history museum. The handwriting has been authenticated, the dates consistent. His final entry, dated November 1959. They've ended the program. Too many complications, they said. I think we pushed too far, asked too much of human physiology. Some boundaries exist for reasons we don't fully understand. Lake Ladoga presents the most extraordinary claim. Swimming under ice for distances measured in kilometers, not meters. The physics seem impossible, the survival odds negligible. Yet Lake Ladoga held strategic importance during this period. Its waters connected to vital waterways, its ice-covered surface a potential route for winter operations. If Soviet researchers believed they could develop swimmers capable of such feats, the military value would have been immense. And the temptation to test the limits of human potential, to answer the question of what could be achieved. In the context of Cold War competition, such temptation might have proven irresistible. Other swimmers supposedly involved in the program have proven difficult to trace. Names appear in partial documents, references without context. Dmitry Morozov, Irina Belova, Konstantin Sokolov. Some emigrated, some died young, some simply vanished from public records. Attempts to contact their families have produced uncomfortable silences. Either they don't know, don't remember, or have been instructed not to speak. One niece of an alleged participant responded to inquiries with a single sentence. "My uncle served his country. That's all anyone needs to know." Then declined further communication. The State University of Physical Culture continues to operate today, now known by a different name. Its archives remain partially closed, certain sections requiring special permissions. Researchers who've attempted to investigate 1950s programs report frustration. Documents are misfiled or missing or damaged by water exposure and improper storage. A librarian, speaking off the record, suggested that certain materials were deliberately removed in the early 1990s. "Orders came from somewhere," she said. "We were told specific files needed to be relocated for preservation. They never came back." Whether this represents routine archival work or something more deliberate. Interpretation depends on one's perspective. The question that haunts this story isn't ultimately about what happened, but about what we choose to believe happened. The Soviet Union excelled at creating ambiguity, at maintaining plausible deniability. Could a program training swimmers for ultra-long-distance cold water endurance have existed? Physiologically challenging, but perhaps not impossible. Did it exist? The evidence suggests something occurred, but its exact nature remains elusive, like a figure glimpsed beneath ice, distorted by layers of frozen water. The outline is visible, but the details dissolve when we try to focus. Perhaps that uncertainty is precisely the point. What we're left with are fragments, coaches' journals, bureaucratic paper trails, witness testimonies, and the persistent questions they raise. Stories of swimmers who achieved the impossible, then disappeared into official silence. Of a state that pushed human limits in pursuit of strategic advantage. Of individuals who sacrificed recognition for their accomplishments in service of something they believed was larger than themselves. Whether those accomplishments were real or imagined, whether the sacrifice was honored or exploited. These questions ripple through the decades, cold and deep, like the waters where some say extraordinary swims once occurred, or perhaps never did. The truth, like so much from that era, remains frozen beneath the surface, waiting for conditions warm enough to finally thaw.